Hey people, it is Sunday, October the 3rd, and it is 4:36 in the afternoon, and the temperature is 14 degrees Celsius. And I'm not in Toronto as usual. I am here in my hometown of North Bay, Ontario, which is about a 3-hour drive north of the Greater Toronto area. We actually made the drive in just about 3 hours, my friend and I. Starting from Vaughan Metropolitan Center subway station. That's where he picked me up. And I'm in the West End here of North Bay, the Old West End as it's called. Walking along a street called Murray Street, and I'm heading towards the North Bay Waterfront. Well, the Old West End is the nicest of the older residential neighborhoods in the city. A lot of homes here are over 100 years old, and they're the large brick variety. As you can see, this monster house here I think that was once the home of a senator. I'm not sure who lives there now, but I think everyone still refers to it as the senator's house. Or at least they did. So we're just a little bit west of the downtown core. Although the streets in North Bay are kind of confusing. The ones that are labeled east and west, if you look at a map, they actually run more north and south. It's a little quirk of the street layout here in North Bay. And here's McIntyre Street West, which is a very nice residential street. When I lived in North Bay, before I moved, I lived on McIntyre Street East, which is on the other side of downtown, and that is the rundown side of town. And there is the courthouse. It looks like it got a bit of a renovation. Those sort of bookends on either end here weren't there before. And we're coming up on Main Street West. So the heart of downtown is in that direction. There's an old traditional main street with historic buildings. And that's a relatively new addition across the way, the Homewood Suites by Hilton Hotel. That was built after I left town. Let's look down Main Street West. And that's Oak Street right there. Heading into the core. And this here is Memorial Drive. And this is the road that runs along the waterfront. And as it's a rather cool, overcast Sunday, I'm not expecting there to be too much activity at the waterfront right now. I will probably come through this area again in the next couple of days when the weather is expected to be nicer with some sunny skies and warmer temperatures. And I'll likely do a live stream around here. And this is a large brownfield site that used to be the home to an industrial building that was demolished some years ago, and the site has stood here empty ever since. But now there's a proposal to build some condominiums here. I think 3 8-story condominium towers are proposed for this site, which is rather tall for North Bay. Most buildings don't go above 10 floors here. I think there are only 2 buildings in North Bay that are over 10 floors, and they're both 11 floors. At one time there was a 14-story apartment building, but it was demolished in the early 1980s due to being structurally unsound. It was brought down in a controlled implosion. And that was featured on a TV show, a popular TV show at the time, called Thrill of a Lifetime, where somebody's thrill was to be the one to push the button that would bring down a large building in a implosion. So I remember watching that on TV and feeling a bit sad that the tallest building in North Bay was being imploded, because I am a fan of tall buildings. And then they did build a new apartment building on the same site afterwards, but it was only 11 floors. So the city has never yet seen a building as tall as that one. And that building was called the Lakeview Towers, I remember. And I think 1982 was when it was imploded. After only 11 years of existing. I think it was completed in 1973 and then demolished in 1982. And there's a little bit of North Bay history for you. And there's Lake Nipissing. And looking in that direction, the lake seems to go on almost forever. And those are actually islands you can see out there. That's not the other side of the lake. I think those are called the Manitou Islands. And one of those islands is the home of an old abandoned mine shaft, which you can see jutting up sometimes. And here's one of the beaches. In the summertime, these are actually a very popular place for sunbathers. The water here is shallow and warm in the summertime. I mean, it's shallow all year round, but being shallow, it's quite warm when the weather's nice. And there are a number of other beaches stretched all the way along the lakeshore And here's the North Bay Marina. And as you can see, the trees here have already started turning color. The leaves. So fall appears to be in full swing here. In Toronto, the leaves have not really started turning color yet, at least not downtown. And this is King's Wharf, although growing up here this was always referred to as the government dock. I think it was later renamed King's Wharf. I just wanted to walk out onto the dock here because there are some neat views of downtown from out here. And we can get a look at the Chief Commanda II, which is a tour boat that cruises around Lake Nipissing. I've been on there a few times. And there it is. And somebody is sitting in their vehicle and listening to Black Sabbath. So there's a look at the Chief Commanda. I think this boat holds about 100 people, and it is a twin-hulled catamaran style boat. It's looking back towards downtown. A couple of new recent additions to the skyline from here, if you want to call it that. Those buildings with the blue are still under construction. See some people fishing. This is a popular fishing spot. Lake Nipissing itself is a very popular lake for fishing. People come from hundreds of miles around from southern Ontario just to fish here in the lake.
No score in the Yankees game. 11-1.
The predecessor to this Chief Commanda is permanently docked over along the waterfront, and it now serves as a restaurant and bar. So we'll be passing by that shortly.
Giants are winning 9-1.
Quite breezy, and the wind is actually a bit on the chilly side. I actually had to bring my hoodie with me, as I was just wearing a t-shirt. I thought I'd be fine, but then I was like, you know what, this might actually be hoodie weather. Although there's not much in the way of waves on the lake. Usually when it's windy, there can be some pretty big waves on Lake Nipissing. Like whitecaps crashing up against the break wall there. That's pretty neat to see. And then the summertime when there's big waves, it was always fun to go wading out into the water and having the big waves crash over you. It looks like they're doing some work here on the boardwalk, because this was a boardwalk that extended right to here. Maybe they're just replacing the boards. They probably have stood there since they were initially installed over 30 years ago. Maybe it was time for a redo. And here's the band shell. I've seen all kinds of bands play here over the years, including some fairly big names, at least big by Canadian standards. Yeah, it looks like we have a cricket game going on here. That's something you wouldn't have seen in North Bay 10, 20 years ago. The city was not exactly multicultural while I was growing up here, but that's been changing in recent years. More immigrants have started to settle in the city, and also there's a university here and a college that are the major employers in the city now, and they bring in a lot of students, international students. And I've walked along here countless times. This area was always popular on Canada Day. This is where the whole city would converge to watch the Canada Day fireworks, which were always set off over the lake. So you'd have literally like 10-20,000 people down here, which is a large portion of the city's entire population, which is only around 53,000. And there's the original Chief Commanda, as I was talking about earlier. Its days as a lake-faring vessel are behind it. Now it's just called The Boat. It's the name of the restaurant and bar. And I believe a relative of mine works there, actually. One of my cousins. I still have a few cousins who live in town. All in all, I think just my mother. I have an uncle who just recently moved back to the North Bay area. And a few cousins, and I think that's all I have left in the way of family. I still have a number of friends who live here. Some who moved away and then returned after 20 years in Toronto or other cities. When most young people do leave North Bay, they tend to go to either Toronto or Ottawa. And of course, some go to London, Hamilton. And of course, some leave the province altogether. But if you're talking about Ontario cities, I'd say Toronto and Ottawa are easily the number 1 and 2 locations for ex-North Bayites. Both Toronto and Ottawa are only around 3.5 hours drive from North Bay, so they're relatively close. If you want to visit your family or make quick trips for the weekend or even day trips, that's perfectly doable. A lot of people confuse North Bay with Thunder Bay. And of course, Thunder Bay is very far away. Something like a 16-hour drive from Toronto and a 12-hour drive from North Bay to Thunder Bay. And as a former North Bayite, and I'm sure many other North Bayites, former and current, can agree, when people from Southern Ontario confuse North Bay and Thunder Bay, that's probably one of our biggest pet peeves. Considering how ridiculously far apart they are. Oh, this is new, this sort of sloping ramp here. And I don't recall there being traffic lights here, although they might have been installed right around the time when I was leaving. Yeah, I believe they were, because they built this underground tunnel on the other side of the road to access downtown without having to go all the way around. And I guess they put those traffic lights in shortly after. We'll go through that tunnel in a minute. I'll just show a bit more here along the waterfront. There's an Inukshuk, if that's what they're called. I think walking in the other direction along the waterfront is actually more scenic, because then you get the backdrop of the escarpment with all the colored leaves and whatnot. So maybe I'll do another walk heading in the other direction before I leave, or a live stream. There's all kinds of Inukshuks along here. I just noticed. Wow, someone has been busy. And it's quite common to hear people speaking French in North Bay. There is a sizable Francophone community in town. I think around 15% or so of the population would identify as Francophone. And the Quebec border is only about a 45-minute drive away. The town of Temiskaming, Quebec is our closest neighbor in that province. And it's always been a tradition for North Bay kids to make the 45-minute drive to Temiskaming when they turn 18 to hit up the bars there. Although I never did that. But of course, Francophones in North Bay can all speak English as well. I don't think there's any French speakers in North Bay who don't speak perfect English. And you wouldn't even know they're Francophone if you heard them speaking English. Only their names might be the indicator of their Francophone heritage. So I can still say, I think, without stretching the truth all too much, I think this is one of the nicest waterfronts of any Ontario city that's built along a lake. Alright, so now we'll go up to that tunnel that will take us into downtown. The waterfront does continue on for another kilometer or so. And there are a couple more beaches heading down that way as well. And there's still a working rail line here, the CP rail line. When they redeveloped the waterfront, they did remove most of the tracks. There was a large rail yard here before, and they tore that all out and have been in the process of converting it to green space, but they did have to leave the main CP line. They couldn't get rid of that. So that's why they had to build this pedestrian underpass over here, going underneath the railway tracks. And there you can see the underpass. So as I was saying, this was all completed just right before I moved away. So I never really got to experience this whole thing much. In my day, if you wanted to get from the waterfront here to the downtown, you had to go all the way around to the end on that side, or all the way around to the end on this side, and then loop back into downtown again, and that could be quite the lengthy journey. And this certainly makes it a lot quicker and easier. It's very quiet around here. It's a little bit unnerving, actually, how quiet it is. And that's the old CP rail station, which now serves as the local museum. North Bay was founded in 1882, I believe, and became a town in 1891, and it became a city in 1925. And that's new, splash pad. I think that's a more recent addition to the waterfront. There's also talk for years of building a skate park around here, but I don't think that ever came to fruition. And there's the North Bay Transit bus terminal. It's nice to see they still are running buses on Sundays. Some smaller cities do not have Sunday bus service, but North Bay always made sure to have fairly good bus service for a small city, with buses running not only on Sundays but also running fairly late into the night, like 11 or 12. I'm not sure if that's still the case. So there you can see the front side of the former train station, now the museum. And this is the foot of Ferguson Street. And this is Oak Street. So that's about it for the waterfront. I think I'll probably save a tour of the downtown for another video. We can just see a little bit here of the edge of downtown. So if you enjoyed the walk along the North Bay waterfront, starting from the old West End, and then along the waterfront and up to the end of the King's Wharf, and then back down along the boardwalk, and then under the tunnel, the new pedestrian underpass, into downtown. And this up ahead is Main Street. So as I said, I'll do another video walking along Main Street, so keep an eye out for that. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Leave a comment below and like and share and subscribe if you haven't already. And be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description where you can do so via PayPal and via my merch store. And you can also find me on Instagram under KContinuum. So thanks for watching, and be sure to keep checking back because, as always, I will continue.